Hey guys, welcome back. Last time I painted up the official Trench Crusade Desecrated Saint model, and in this week's video I'm going to be painting up a really cool Proxy model that I found online. This one's from Bestiarum Games and is called the Desecrated Saint, and I think it's a much more fitting representation of what I imagine the Desecrated Saint to look like. And I'm going to be painting this up using some speed painting techniques, just to show you guys how you can paint this model to a high standard with minimal effort. And the first part of the process is to get the model primed, and instead of going for my normal black primer, I'm going to instead use some colour forged bruised purple. And this is going to give a really nice dark purple, which is going to give a nice and interesting shade colour to the model, rather than the standard black. And from there I'm going to apply an all-over zenithal highlight to the model, and instead of using my normal off-white or grey colour, I'm this time going to be using some Army Painter Kraken Lavender, which is a off-white colour with a small hint of purple in it. And this small hint of purple in this colour is going to really complement the dark purple undercoat. And this is just a standard zenithal highlight using an airbrush, trying to hit the model from above and at 45 degrees, which will leave all the recesses in the dark purple and highlight up all of the raised areas in the off-white purple. And once the zenithal highlight was applied, I then quickly come in with some Liquitex Muted Violet ink, and I'm just going to use this to airbrush onto the claws that are on the ends of all of the tentacles, trying my best to avoid any overspray onto any of the other parts of the model. And even if you do get a little bit of overspray, you can always just go back in with the previous colour. Now that I've laid down all of the base colours for the model, I'm now going to try and differentiate all of the individual parts. Firstly, by differentiating the skin from the tentacles, and to do that I'm going to be using some Vallejo Express Wicked Purple. And although this is called purple, it's more of a grey colour, which does leave some purple tints in the recesses. And this is perfect for what I'm looking for, as I want to push the skin to more of a grey tone, while still keeping the purple in the recesses. And I'm just going to use this to paint in all of the skin on the arms, legs, chest and face. And I'm just going to be applying one coat of this. Next up, I'm going to be tackling all of the wings and some of the other trim on the model. And to do this, I'm going to be using some Army Painter Voodoo Shade, which was one of the colours from the John Blanche set. And this is definitely one of my favourite colours from the set. It's a really nice brown colour that has many applications, and I'm going to use it to paint in, as I mentioned, the wings. But I'm also going to use this to paint in the crown as well, and some of the other trim around the neck and the waist as well. And once allowing that time to fully dry, I then come in with some Army Painter bony spikes, and I'm just going to use this to dry brush on some highlights to all of the voodoo shade areas. Just using a light dry brush to try and catch all of the edges and raised areas. And this should just apply a very quick highlight to these areas and make them pop a little bit more and make them look a little bit less dull. And you don't want to go overboard with this dry brushing. Keep it nice and light with minimum amounts of paint on your dry brush, and that way you're not going to take away too much of the previous voodoo shade. Next up, I'm going to be highlighting up all of the skin, and to do that I picked a slightly lighter grey than is currently on the model, and I went for Army Painter Ash Grey, and I just thinned this down with a little bit of Flow Improver to make sure it flows nicely on the model, and just applied a basic layer highlight to all of the skin, trying to get a nice smooth coverage, and just leaving the very deepest recesses in the previous colour. And again, this should just highlight these areas a little bit and make them look a little bit less like a flat grey colour. And next I'm going to tackle the blade of the weapon, and to do that off camera I firstly painted in the area in black and then allowed that to dry, and then came in with a very quick dry brush of some Army Painter Heavy Metal, which is a really nice dark steel colour. And I just very lightly dry brush this on using downward strokes, making sure the majority of the paint gets deposited on all of the upward facing surfaces and towards the top part of the blade. And I'm just making sure that I don't hit any of the tentacles or flesh during this process, and I'll switch up to a smaller sized brush as I get tighter into these areas. And unfortunately the weapon was making contact with the wing, and all of the dry brushing managed to break the glue bond from the wing to the body, which normally would be quite frustrating, but since the next part of the process was to paint in the staff of the weapon, this actually made it a little bit easier and gave me easy access to all of the staff without having to paint around the wing. And I just gave this a quick coat of Vallejo Express Battle Dress Brown before then reattaching the wing to the model. Next up, it was time to add some shade to the model, firstly with the skin, and I decided to do a little bit of experimentation here and use a combination of Villainy Inks Caput Mortem and Umbral Nightshade, and mixing these in with a 2:1 ratio, with 2 parts of the Umbral Nightshade to 1 part of the Caput Mortem, which should make a really interesting purplish wash. And I'm just going to use this to apply to all of the skin and all of the tentacles. And this should just help to darken all of these areas and reinforce that deep purple colour. I'm then going to switch to some Villainy Inks Decrepit Filth, and I'm just going to use this in the exact same way on all of the other parts of the model, apart from the blade of the weapon, which I'm just going to leave as is. And as usual, this should just flow into all of the recesses, providing additional contrast and shade. And I then left that for around 20 to 30 minutes to dry, and then came in with some makeup sponges to perform the removal process. And for the most part, you don't need to use any white spirits if you only leave it for around 20 to 30 minutes. And I just use the makeup sponges to wipe away all of the excess enamel wash, which should uncover all of the highlight areas, while still leaving the wash in all of the recesses, providing additional shade. And if you do encounter any stubborn areas, you can always just dip the tip of the makeup sponge in a little bit of white spirits, and that should help to remove the enamel wash from those areas. And I did forget to mention that I did apply an all-over coat of satin varnish to the entire model prior to applying the enamels to the model. And this just helps to protect the model and ensure that the white spirits or aggressive brushing with the makeup sponges doesn't remove any of the paint underneath. I then allow that to fully dry for 24 hours, before then coming back in with another coat of satin varnish, just to take away any shine from the enamel washes. And the last step was to go in and apply some blood effects to the cratered hole in the face of the model. And for that, I just went in with a little bit of Army Painter True Blood and just used this to stipple on and around this wounded area, making sure I apply some of this to some of the facial area around the wound. And after that was done, the model was pretty much complete. All that was left to do was get an appropriate base for the model. And all in all, I'm really happy with the way the model turned out. It's a really quick and easy process that utilises the purple zenithal highlight to establish the overall tone of the model, and then using some contrasts and shades to paint in the other parts of the model, and then using the Villainy inks to apply that additional shade and contrast. But as always, let me know what you think on how it turned out in the comments down below. And a big thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers. I really appreciate the continued support, and I'll see you in the next one.